What do we have today? July 15th, 2022. MoneyWise. Now, let me just mention, I've noticed MoneyWise as being they've taken things to a higher level as being a complete media scam. Apparently, it seems to be more of a PR company promoting, not penny stock promotion, but promotion of con artists. Seems like MoneyWise somehow is in cahoots with some of these broken clock fraudsters out there. And just note that for the future when you see MoneyWise and you see all the bullshit. And this Jing Pan, he's the point man for promoting these con artists. So today we've got the typical line. This seems like the same line that Jim Rogers has been saying now for at least 10 years. The worst bear market in my lifetime. How many times have you heard that from Jim Rogers, right? Here's why Jim Rogers thinks stocks will decline for a long time. For a long time! How many years, Jim? But he also suggests 2 shock-proof assets for protection. Well, what's it going to be? Is it going to be gold and silver or gold and farmland? I would say it's going to be one or the other, knowing Jim Rogers. Of course, let me just mention, for those of you who don't know already, Jim Rogers is a great contrarian indicator. And if you've been following Jim Rogers, just about everything he said over at least the past 15 years or longer has been completely wrong. Whether it's the US dollar, US stock market, whatever. The Russian ruble, gold. If you follow Jim Rogers, do the opposite and you will make a fortune. And I've documented his track record, of course. What people don't understand, of course, and a lot of people get sucked into Jim Rogers until they take a step back and review the past 10 years and realize the guy's a disaster. He's a con artist. You see, they don't realize until later on, if they're lucky, they realize it, is that they get fooled into the media's typical byline. Oh, he's a legendary investor. He made such and such in the quantum fund. Folks, that's all bullshit. Show me the evidence. Show me the third-party audited performance of that fund 50 years ago. 50 years ago. And then tell me Jim Rogers' role. Okay? And then prove to me there was no insider trading with George Soros. You understand the point? All that aside, none of that even matters. What really matters is, what the fuck are you doing today, Jimmy? Fact is, Jim Rogers didn't retire 20, 30 years ago like he claims. He's been working this whole time. He's a media guy. He gets paid to ramble nonsense, so he gets paid positions on the boards of shady, shitty-ass companies listed in Russia and in China and in Canada. That's a fact. That's where he's making his money. That's why he's flapping his mouth every day. He's not retired. Retired people, especially if they have money, they're not being bothered with all this nonsense. They're enjoying their lives. What's Jim Rogers doing? Jim Rogers is bending over backwards to become a media whore because he makes his money as a media celebrity. And he promotes Russia, he promotes China, he smashes the U.S. because he was basically kicked out of the U.S. after he berated this graduate student at Columbia several years ago. He was essentially berated, he was essentially kicked out. He was not going to ever have anything going on in America, so he left for China and created this whole little bullshit narrative, which I've gotten into before. I'm not going to talk about that today. In addition, he, of course, is one of these broken clock doomsday guys so he can get paid to be a paid speaker at these gold conferences. Okay, ask Jim Rogers to show us his tax statement. Let's see where his income's coming from. Let's see his investments. If he's a legendary investor, if he's a great investor, show me his performance. He manages, supposedly, his family money. Show me the money. Show me the performance. Right, folks? I'm an investment analyst. I show my track record. Right? I don't even need to show anything because I've been banned. I'm a nobody. Right? I'm not put on the pedestal where I deserve as one of the top investment minds in the world. That's fact. I've got the track record. So let's take a look at this bullshit, what Jim Rogers is going to be pitching. I'm not even going to waste my time. See, notice, Rogers knows a thing or two about making money in turbulent times. He co-founded the Quantum Fund with George Soros in 1973. 99% of the people listening to this right now weren't even born. That's how long it's been. 50 years? I mean, I don't give a fuck what happened 50 years ago. What have you done for me lately, you old senile con artist? So, still, the multimillionaire. Notice, folks, I honestly believe this money-wise, gene-panned, con artist piece of garbage working for this boiler room this is not even a news, this is a complete propaganda bullshit. You'll see this site promote other con artists that are trying desperately to get exposure. Ray Dalio, all these guys. Money-wise is a complete fucking scam. Let's continue here. So they want to alert you to the other bullshit that they've written about. So, here we go. Precious metals, of course. Jim Rogers. He's a long-time advocate because he gets paid to pump and to be on the boards of shady-ass bullshit companies. If you don't believe me, folks, look it up. I've done the research. I've already documented this. A bunch of nonsense. You know, it's funny. I'll just go ahead and show this right now because there's a lot of ignorant, lazy, stupid people out there who you have to put stuff in their face or they won't even bother to look into it themselves. And many of them are so stupid that even after you put it into their face, their confirmation bias and Dunning-Kruger gets in the way of reality, and they're not even convinced of the reality. So nonetheless, I'm going to go ahead and show you the performance of precious metals. I'm going to show you what gold has done during this 4-decade plus period of high inflation. Let's take a look at this chart of gold. Now, I hope you can see down here, it's kind of cut this off, but it's from August 2019 to current, and that's July 15th, 2022. I want you to take a note here. Notice gold soared in the middle of 2020. Of course, this was the coronavirus pandemic lockdown. This is the panic period. This is when gold takes off during panic. And it peaked out in August 2020. Since that time, it's come down, which you would expect, the behavior of gold. But right around, let's say, by late summer of 2021, here you can see, this is August, started to see a little more inflation, and by the fall, by October, eyes were certainly being raised, even if you were skeptical of inflation. And then November, December, end of 2021, we had very high inflation. You can see it's much higher today. The latest CPI headline is, I think, 9.1%, and that would be right around here. Look at what gold has been doing since that time. It's been going down. Gold has sold off big time. It's collapsed. Don't you think gold, if it's a hedge against inflation, should be steadily increasing and increasing more and more and more? Gold is not a hedge against inflation. Everyone that you have ever heard say that is a complete moron. That's absolutely false, folks. That's a fact. Okay? And this proves once again why it's easy for me to dominate the field of investment analysis, because there's so many idiots out there and followers. So I just wanted to show this. Of course, you can go back to many periods, and gold is not a hedge against inflation. It's a terrible place to be. In fact, you can even argue to some extent that the U.S. stock market is a better hedge against inflation than gold. I'm not going to get into that discussion, but let me get back to Jim Rogers here. And of course, whenever you have people write stuff about gold, it can't be printed out of thin air like fiat money. All this nonsense. Of course, I've been exposing the gold pumpers and all their mythology, their lies and nonsense for a very long time. I am the leading expert in the world on debunking the gold pumping and the gold bug narratives. That's fact. And it's funny because you can see, well, I'm not buying them now because in a big collapse, everything goes down. This proves that Jim Rogers is absolutely, it's shocking how clueless he is, because you would think somebody that's been in the professional investment world would actually understand gold. Folks, during a collapse, gold actually goes up. That's a fact. Gold goes up short term during a collapse. That's why it has a negative correlation to equities, to the stock market. When the stock market collapses, gold goes up. I showed you that chart earlier. When gold spiked, it peaked shortly after the pandemic lockdown. Jim Rogers is a complete idiot. So here he's also, we got an opportunity to pump some of these silver mining stocks. Agriculture. Well, I did a follow-up on Jim Rogers several years ago. He talked about how farmers are going to be driving Lamborghinis, and in reality, many of the farmers face bankruptcy or are barely getting by. And you can take a look at another way, of course, Jim Rogers makes money is he licenses useless name built on a mountain of lies and disinformation. He licenses that name based upon this bullshit premise that he's a legendary investor to companies that run commodities ETFs. Take a look at the performance. It's been you would have already lost all your money if you've been following Rogers over the past several years. Only recently, of course, have ag commodities taken off, but it's too late. If you were investing in the ag commodities when Rogers, or shortly after he put his name on those ETFs, you went bankrupt a long time ago. You can just take a look for yourself. I'm not going to pull up the charts. I've done that in previous videos. So he's pitching this stuff, when these prices are probably much closer to the peak, right, longer term, than they are low. Why wasn't Rogers coming out and pounding the table 2 years ago, right? He's pounding the table now when these commodities are very high. They're, in some cases, historically high, certainly over several decades, many of them. Folks, this is not the time to be buying commodities. And by the way, these ETFs, I'll not get into it, the details, but they're all based on futures contracts, which means a lot of fees, a lot of expenses, and typically, unless you're in a strong bull market, you cannot hold them or you won't do well. Right now, they're in a strong bull market, but anyway, let's get to this whole thing here. Jim Rogers is a complete career con man. Con man, Jim Rogers. Let him know. I told you, he knows who I am, and he knows I've been exposing him for many years. Let's take a look at the comments and see if any of these knuckleheads that tune into Yahoo have gotten wiser over the years. Let's hope that they have. First comment I see here. Well, 3 new comments. Okay, this political nonsense. Okay. Mikey seems to make pretty good sense. Silver is only good for killing werewolves. Stick to good quality stocks and replace silver with, well, Bitcoin. No, that's not good, Mikey. You blew it there. Gold is good for feelings. Just 2 weeks ago, he said the same thing, as well as 25, 20, 15, 10, and 5 years ago. This man is a great contrarian indicator. That's right. How are his gold coins holding up? There you go. Indeed, I've been watching Rogers for decades as well, and whenever stocks are down, he comes out of the woodwork to advise selling your stocks while buying gold and silver. If you follow this guy, you're pretty much going to lose. That's right. You've been kind, Mr. K. And so Michael, this is a good point to address because Michael represents a lot of the idiots out there. I don't know how his gold coins are holding up, but he must be doing something right. I wish I have 1/10 of his wealth. Okay, Michael, how much is his wealth? Do you know? Can you verify it? Somebody tell me, what is his wealth? You're going on urban legend, Michael. Show me the facts, number one. Number two, let's see the source of his wealth. The source. You understand? Rogers makes his money as a whore for shitty-ass, shady boiler room companies. he gets paid to be on the board of, and being a whore at these gold pumping scam artist speaking events like hard asset conferences. There you go. Take a look at Teddy. Teddy's got it down because he sells advice to lemmings. Why don't you just do internet search with the data parameters set for 2019, 2020. See how accurate he's been. Every article said he's best known for his hedge fund that ended in 1980, 42 years ago. So you could just read these comments. It appears that a lot of people are waking up to the media scam, where the financial media promotes a bunch of con artists and broken clock idiots to create two sides of the trade. They want the audience to be on the wrong side of the trade. There you go. Just read, folks. While Jim Rogers struck gold back in the day with Quantum Fund, he's been consistently wrong on most of his predictions for the last 30 years. And I question whether he struck gold with the Quantum Fund. Once again, show me the fucking evidence. Show me his role. And show me that there's no evidence of insider trading. Because we all know the king of insider trading is George Soros. Made the mistake of investing in some international markets that he was bullish on and lost big time. Learned a valuable lesson from that and never again trusted my finances to these so-called experts. Not sure where he gets his hunches, but if he says sell, I would buy or hold instead. Read him for entertainment value only. That's right, folks. Notice he mentioned these so-called experts. That's right. If they're promoted in the media as experts, you better guarantee, I'll guarantee you, 99% of the time, they're frauds. They're con artists. They're being promoted as supermen in the financial industry based upon lies and cherry-picking nonsense. The 1% of the time where you find someone credible in the media, which is not often that they have them, obviously 1% of the time, they're not going to tell you shit to help you. They're there for FaceTime, for free marketing. This is the same infomercial Yahoo's been running for months. That's right. It's an infomercial. MoneyWise is paying to run this bullshit disguised as news. It's fraud. It's media fraud. You guys better wake up to what's going on. It's going on throughout all the financial media now. Ad-based content's going to screw you. You're going to lose always. And Rogers is consistently bearish and wrong in his pronouncements. That's right. That's correct. Mike says, I'm 73 years old, and Rogers hasn't made a correct call for as long as I remember. If this is the worst bear market in his lifetime, his photo is misleading. He must really be only 14 years old. He was telling a few years ago to buy up peanuts and invest in China. Well, for me, both are a no-no because I have peanuts allergy and can't trust the CCP. Here we go. Apparently, Roman K has been checking out my website because I actually did an expose on his commodity funds. Just look at his commodity fund and compare it to holding cash over the last couple of decades. That's right. You lost your ass. What the hell? I'm going to go ahead and show you because most of you are going to be too lazy to take a look. And so these are the ETFs that Rogers has linked his name to. So let me explain. These aren't his funds. He sold his name to this because, of course, most people, the lemmings out there, the sheep, the dumb money. Oh, he's a legendary. Oh, he says to buy commodities. I'm going to buy commodities because I want to make a lot of money like him. Right? Well, here you go. This is Inception. Okay? 2012. And it's funny because this was late 2011. This is actually during the beginning of the commodities bursting, of the bursting of the commodities bubble, which I forecast in my research. That's right. I forecast this to occur in 2011. This was the beginning of the bursting of that bubble. So you can see, as always, Rogers has perfect timing. Of course, he'll tell you, oh, I'm not good at timing. Well, Jim, if you're not good at timing, you keep on saying the same thing month after month, year after year, then people should do well with you eventually, right? Take a look, folks. No matter if you bought it on inception, 950 or whatever, up here, $10, you see it coming up. Oh, wow, it's going up. I'm going to buy it, right? Down, 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 down. I mean, think about this. This has gone down trend-wise. It's trended down pretty consistently for nearly, well, you can call it 10 years. Yeah, I mean, it's been 10 years because it took until late 2020 to break this bearish trend. So ask yourself the question, would you have put in money in this and watched it go down by 60% or 50 or 60% over a 10 or 11 year period? You probably would have at some point sold and taken your losses, right? Only recently has this thing come up to a little bit where it started. And of course, this is probably the peak. And he's still telling people to buy. I'm willing to bet down the road in a couple of years, you're going to see this thing way down again. Let's take a look at another one. This is agricultural return, total return. And I haven't even taken a look at the fees. So the expense ratio is 0.75, 75 basis points. It's pretty high. And keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, what you're not going to hear from anyone else out there, because of course I'm a professional, I'm a seasoned professional who's worked on Wall Street, who's advised multi-billion-dollar funds, worked in venture capital, merchant banking, so on and so forth, leading track record in the world in investment forecasting. That's fact. Write it down. What you're not going to hear anywhere else is that you're also paying additional fees aside from the expense ratio. You're paying for ticket charges. You're paying for these futures contracts trading. See, that's what these ETFs do. They're trading futures contracts. It's very expensive. Anyway, let's take a look at RJI. This is his International Commodity Index, and it began here 2007. Probably sucked people in. Oh my gosh, it's going up. Of course, this was the high inflationary period. This is when oil, WTI, hit, I believe, 148 or something like that by July or August of 2008. And then, of course, it collapsed. But anywhere, if you bought it here, here, or you thought it was coming down, a good time to enter, well, take a look. It still hasn't even come close to where it began. Well, I guess it's a little close. It's almost there, right? Certainly hasn't hit the peak. And we're talking about 15 years later. Think about that. Are you kidding me? I mean, dare I plot a chart of the S&P 500? What the hell? Let's take a look. Now, of course, we want to get a low-cost index here. We don't want to get, we want the S&P. Anybody that tells you, to get some type of an international fund is just a complete clown. They don't know what they're talking about. The fees are much more expensive. Let's see if I can do this. Well, it wouldn't let me type in the VOO or SPY. I couldn't get in there, but you can see that S&P 500 index is going to be very similar to those ETFs, the performance. So you can see just a buy and hold, right? Not counting the dividends from the S&P 500. And this is the previous fund, the agricultural total return from Rogers. You can see minus 6% versus S&P versus 212%. Let's see. I don't know why it didn't. Okay, let's take a look here. Inception. Let's see. Well, it's not working. Let me fix this. So this is not working out too well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move the chart and show you. Because if I make the size smaller, it's not going to do the calculation. But this is since inception. This fund began, I believe, October 22nd, 2007. And that's what I put the date at. And you can see through current July 15th, 2022, this Jim Rogers agriculture total return returned minus 19.58%. And keep in mind, that's not all the fees. There's fees that are not included here. And then 158% versus the S&P 500. And it's a similar situation. Looks like October 21st was the inception of the Rogers International Commodity Index. You can see since that time, current July 15th, 2022, Rogers Fund returned a minus 23.26%. Minus over that long period, 15-year stretch, versus the S&P's 144.6% return. And so this is the final Rogers Fund. Remember, Jim Rogers, legendary investor, quantum fund co-founder. He's a genius. Well, his metals fund, his metals total return. So this was also, let's see, looks like about October 7th, 2007. Let's compare that with the S&P. And there you have it. Wow. Okay, so this is the best performing fund because it returned, looks like 0%. Wait, aren't precious metals supposed to hedge against inflation? I mean, versus the S&P 157% during that period of time. There you have it, folks. I did all the work for you. Let's see what not sweaty. Jim Rogers is a one-trick pony that got it right on his quantum fund that went up like 4,000%, but he's pretty much been wrong ever since. In 2005, he said he would never invest in the U.S. dollar again. Then, a few years later, he said he was back in. Then, he told everyone to invest in Russia and China. And by the way, when he said to invest in Russia and China, they both collapsed. I documented that in several videos. And he shorted Amazon when it was dirt cheap. He has no clue from what he has said the last 20 years. If he thinks we're in an inflationary environment, he would be all in on gold and silver. But he says he's not buying. I said it's deflationary when Fed raises interest rates since last year. And gold, silver, and Bitcoin have gone down in price. This is deflation, not inflation, not stagflation. I'm not going to continue to read this nonsense because then it's not true, but then he gets into political garbage. But the first part of this is accurate, and then he drifts off into like Alex Jones, Peter Schiff territory. So I used to like this guy, but he's been wrong for the last 45 years. Rogers shows up at every market downturn with his doom and gloom, or gloom and doom. Okay. So this is encouraging to see that at least some people are finally waking up to guys like Rogers. The problem is you got newer guys in the game of con artistry that people they haven't acknowledged yet. I bought into the silver argument in the 80s. Terrible return. It'll be terrible in the future also. I thought Rogers was dead. Does anyone really look to him as a responsible source of market direction? Standard ploy by these so-called experts. First, doom and gloom. Then recommending one or two bulletproof stocks which carries us through it. Of course, when they want to get out of them at a higher price. Yep, that's pretty much correct. This guy's been saying exactly the same thing for the past 40 years. Yep. So, There you have it, folks. Jim Rogers, a career con man, complete liar, contrarian indicator. He makes his money through pitching garbage so he can serve on the boards of garbage companies in Russia and China and in Canada. Resource companies, scam companies. This is a fact, folks. If you don't believe it, do the research. I've shown it on numerous videos. I've been following this broken clock con man for many years. Okay? And this should serve as a blueprint, a general blueprint, not only for all these guys in the media, but then you look online, all these YouTube people. Folks, they're all scammers. All of them. I can easily prove the guys from the industry are scammers, like Rogers and so on and so forth, which I have. Then you got the guys on YouTube who don't have any experience. They're complete bozos, complete frauds, complete liars and idiots. And if any of you follow them, you're doomed. You're screwed.